And you'll love this one, Robin. Okay, welcome. Today we're going to do a little bit of work in the IT band. It's a 20-minute class today. I'm finding the 20 minutes seems to be really, really popular. Jumping in, I know it's an easy grab time. So I'm starting to condense a few classes down and also really targeting certain areas so that you can, jump in at any time and know that you can do this, a couple of times a day if you're struggling with these areas. So for today's practice, you're going to need 2 blocks and a strap. If you've got, you haven't got a hold of a strap, just anything a little over 1 meter long, like scarf or a tie from your dressing gown, anything like that. We're going to start on our back and just get a bit of a benchmark for how flexible our IT band actually is or how tight it might be. And bear in mind that a lot of this is pretty normal. So if you think of all of the connective tissue that runs and embeds itself down into the femur bone, you get a bit of an understanding of why it gets tight. And it's an area that we are constantly pounding and using all of these muscles. So they tighten up, and in turn sort of refers back to where it attaches to the bone. Another really big element is hydration. And because we have had in this last week here where we are a fair bit of rain, yet hot, sweaty, sort of humid days, we need to replenish a lot more water. And often when it's raining, you don't feel like drinking water. I don't know if it's just me, but I know I struggle with hydration on those sort of humid days, and I need to remind myself. So, bear in mind, some of your tightness might be a little bit of lack of hydration. We're going to put the strap over one of the balls of your foot. And whenever we hold a strap, I don't want you to be holding it with a bent elbow, because this just means that your bicep is going to be doing a heck of a lot of work and you're going to tire and fatigue. The idea is to lengthen as far, and then as you pull back, you can see your shoulder hugs in. My arm is straight. So I've got this holding pattern, but it's my torso that's doing the work down in the side of the body. So it's not going to fatigue as much. And I simply transfer this to my back. So I'm going to lay on my back and have my leg as straight as possible. So the idea of the strap is if you have really tight hamstrings, you're going to move it further away and you're going to be probably here. If you have super long hamstrings, you might even just let go of the strap and grab your toe. But I actually like a strap because it gives me the mobility as I go across. Now, right hand and right foot. And here, all I'm going to do is pull on that outer edge of my foot. So I'm just rolling the little toe further towards me. And already I can feel the fascia in the side of the leg there, mainly around my knee. And you just want to let that settle. And my hip is flat. So just make sure you really relax there, nice and heavy. And then all we're going to do is just slowly move it across, and it's moving at about 1 centimeter at a time until my big toe is sitting somewhere on top or above my left hip. And I'm in this very juicy stretch already. So I'm just letting that happen. And I'm not firing up any muscles here. I'm keeping it very soft, relaxed. Because what I'm trying to do is not fire my muscles to grab into this connective tissue. And it starts to really back off quickly when it backs off. So I go a little bit further. So all I'm aiming at is no further than the side of my body. And what I see a lot is people rushing this bit because they think more is better, or going further over is a sign of more flexibility, and you sort of miss these vital beginning stretches. And now I'm going to change hands, left hand on, right hand out to stabilize myself. So you can plant your palm down, and I just take it a little further. I'm not letting my hip roll up. I'm keeping my hip down, and I'm just letting that thigh cross over. And I'm in a deep stretch here. This is big. Just check that you haven't let your knee bend, because that will back you off the stretch completely. And also that the little toe is still pulling towards you. And then we're going to come back to the center, bring your knee in, release it from the strap, and just notice how that feels, that simple stretch. It's pretty amazing in my body. Like I already feel like my whole hip is opened out. And then I'm going to respond by doing this on the other side. So it's the left hand and on the strap. Again, I'm going to just work that strap so it's around the ball of the foot, and then I'm going to pull on that outer edge. My leg is straight but very soft, not fired up. You don't want this quad really fired at all. And I simply just cross it. Like it really only moves about an inch for me before I feel it. And I want to get at that initial like grab, like where you feel your connective tissue starting to go, ooh, yeah. And just let yourself settle into that. Let your hip get really heavy, because often we lift up to sort of go toward that stretch to ease it off a little. And then we're going to move it gently across again. And I'm only moving as much as I get a bit more sensation, and then I pause there. And your shoulders relaxed. And really taking your time here. And I'm going to go a little more there. My hip is still really anchored. I'm really making sure that the back of my pelvis is down, it's not rolling. And you wait until it really backs off before changing hands, supporting yourself, maybe going a little further, but feel for where it is on you that you get the most. Maybe it's sort of, if your elbow wants to bend, to bring it up a little, just move your hand up so the arm's straight again, so that you're not ending with a strain in the shoulder or the bicep while you're releasing the other part of the body. And again, that little toe, putting a little more effort in that little toe. And then we bend that leg and we take the strap away, but allow yourself to feel what's going on there. It's a pretty nice start. And then I'm going to bring one knee in at a time and rock and roll to come up to sit. So that's feeling a whole lot better already, which is pretty nice. And let's make our way into downward facing dog. We'll get into a little flow so that we're nice and warm, and we'll go deeper into these areas and then finish off with a nice stretch. So come over into your downward dog. And just let yourself really relax into that. Just get rid of that necklace out of the way. And I often notice if I stretch my IT band before going into downward dog, my downward dogs are so much more accessible. I'm not sure whether you're feeling the same, but I find that myself. I get very tight in my IT band. So this is divine to feel that looseness. We're going to shorten our dog a little, take your right leg up to the sky, bend the knee, open up the hip, then flatten down the hip. We're going to come into a tiger's curl, and then take the foot onto the outside of that knee and try and bring the knee across, but also at the same time try and square the hips up. So you're sort of coming into almost Garudasana, but your ankle is pressing to the outside. So you're using that leverage to lift that right hip up. And then we're going back, three-legged dog, and lower it down. Same on the other side, left leg lifts, bend the knee, open the hip. That's a natural action.
And then we're going to close the hip down, bring the knee into the tiger's curl, foot on the outside, and then bringing the knee as far across as you can. Press into the ankles so that you can lift the left hip up. And three-legged dog. Lower that down and just walk through the feet. Come to stillness. Take a deep breath in. Steady breath out. Bend the knees, look forward. Step the right foot forward. Wiggle the back foot back a little. Coming up, inhale. Hands to heart. So all we're doing here is we're stretching that left hip flexor because this is all linked in. So we come up here to our tensor fasciae lata that feeds down into that femur. So it's not just the quads. There's a lot of muscles that go in to this IT band that creates that tension. And so we're just allowing this to open, reach tall, hands back to heart. Press open, warrior two. Straightening the front leg for Trikonasana. And so you can see now I'm coming to the inside of the leg. Stretching out those adductors. Letting yourself breathe and steady. And bend the front knee. Hand comes down, left hand to the floor, right hand to the sky. Try not to let the hip wrap under, so you miss out on a nice stretch through the hips otherwise. And just rotating through the upper body. Hands to the mat, downward facing dog. Take a breath. And empty. Bend the knees, look forward. Left foot to the front, coming up. Present. And you can bring the hands to the heart again because we are working this lower area of the body today and just allowing this hip to come upright. So if you tip forward and straighten that back leg, you just go into a lot of compression into the lower back. You're still firing this quad up. So for today's one, we want to work more into stretching. So bending the back knee slightly. Bring the pelvis up so you're like really pushing pubic going forward. And that's forcing this area to stretch open rather than it just relying on the pivot and the strength of that quad at the back. And you're still trying to push the back heel back. You might even deepen it. But so long as you're feeling the majority of it here in the front of the hip. Let's reach tall. Open out, warrior two. Front leg straightens, and we go into the adductors. So they run along the inside of the leg. So there's no point in stretching one side without balancing, even though the emphasis is on one. And we bend, bring that right hand down, left hand peels to the sky. And hands to the mat, downward facing dog. Take a breath here. And a deep breath out. Bend the knees, look forward, stepping right foot forward. Coming into just a lunge, fingertips on the floor. Heart pulls forward. Grab a hold of your blocks here. So this is where we're going to take it up a little. Step the back foot slightly forward so you have your feet a good hip width apart. So they're underneath your hips. And this gives you the ability to keep your hips really square to the front. If you go too far behind, it tends to be very hard. So this one's, we're making it accessible. So pulling the heart forward, pulling the right hip back, and we're getting that, the back nice and flat. As you do this, press into the ball of the front foot, and it's like you're trying to push that leg as straight as possible, and then bow. And it doesn't matter if your head isn't on your shin, it's not for everyone. Use the blocks to support yourself. We're going to bend the front knee, try and tap the nose to the knee, and then keeping it as close as possible, start to stretch into that leg again. So it's pretty intense. And then come back up into a half lift, straightening that leg. So it's quite an intense hamstring stretch. We're going to walk our blocks around, but first of all, heel toe that front foot so that it's now in line, like in front of your back foot. So it's like you're stepping on a tightrope. Then we're going to use the blocks, and instead of doing this and keeping the hips square, we're now going to keep the foot directly forward, but try and bring the hips so that we've squeezed a crisscross at the top of the thighs. Just watch the heel of that front foot doesn't slide around, and that we're pointing that front foot forward, and then we bow there. Now, if you can put as much pressure on the inside of that front foot as you fold, you'll start to feel that IT band quite strongly. And coming up, walk the hands back, heel toe that foot back over, and now let's just fold and take up that space. Bend the knee, take the blocks out of the road, plant the hands, downward facing dog. Take a breath, empty. Bend the knees, look forward, left foot steps to the front of the mat, picking up the blocks as you take that little lunge, and then stepping that back foot so that the hips are square. Heart is pulling forward. Left hip this time is pulling back and really pushing into the ball of that front foot as much as you're pushing into the heel of the back foot. Lower where you can. And this isn't about, hurting yourself at all. It's about just allowing yourself to find the stretch. It's pretty intense. And then we're going to bend the knee, try and tap the nose to the knee, and try and pull, stretch, and strengthen, length into that leg without letting the nose move away from the knee. Coming up halfway, heel toe the foot across so that it's now in front of that foot pointing forward. And then we go around, and you only need to go as far as you can still feel the spine is straight out of the pelvis, not bending around. You don't want one rib cage opening more than the other, so that when we bow, we're bowing over, our spine is straight, and so therefore really quite protected. Ball of that front foot, especially that big knuckle, pressing down, and watching that my front foot hasn't rotated around, which takes you away from that stretch. And we come up, walk the hands, and walk that foot back. Flatten the spine and bow. Coming up, removing the blocks out of the road, downward facing dog. Right leg this time lifts to the sky, bring it through, take it across the body and shoot it out to the side. You want it to come up quite a way. So for now, I'm going to just wiggle that back foot back a little, and I'm going to take that foot over as far as possible. Back knee comes down, and here you can either stay like this with the dorsiflexion of the front foot, or you can come down onto the hip and try and roll that left hip towards the floor as you come onto elbows. So you can see the higher the foot here, the front leg is as straight as possible. And we're just trying to roll the hip down. It's very passive. Shouldn't be too stressful. And slowly Make your way back up to hands. Hitch up the hip and downward facing dog. The left leg rises, bring the knee in, take it across the body, shoot the foot out, wiggle it out a little further, back foot back a little more. And if you're feeling enough here, stay here. Otherwise, I like to come down onto the back knee so that I can find my hip nice and relaxed. I don't dump down in it. And now this hip is trying to roll towards the earth. And we're just letting that soften. And lastly, let's come back up on the hands. And walking through the feet. Come down onto your knees, bringing the feet through to the front. Toes pulling back. Just noticing the space. We're going to finish on our back with our strap back where we began. Getting a bit of a feel as to how much space we might have created. I'm just going to bring it across straight away to the line of my hip, using my right hand so it stops it going too far. I'm just holding that until it ceases to give me feedback. And I'm going to change hands, left hand, let the hip roll this time as we take the foot across and we take a nice revolving twist on the floor there. Just relax shoulders. And changing sides, coming back to the top. Knee comes in. Other foot. Left hand to the left leg so we don't take it across too far. Remember the back of the hips relaxed and it's on the mat. It hasn't rolled off at this stage. And that little toe coming further towards you if you want a bit more of a stretch. Once you feel it stop, that feedback, take it over, letting the hips roll. And that juiciest stretch. And we come back, bend the knee. Take the strap out of the road. Lengthen out the legs. Take the feet a little wider. Let the feet just simply drop apart. And allow your whole body to sink into that extra space that you've just created there. It's like your outer edges have softened and you can spill a little further outward. And for anyone that has the time, please stay in your Shavasana for another minute, just letting your body enjoy that space. Thank you so much for practicing.